We're getting ready for the holidays this week with 3 beginner projects you can make, gift, or sell this season. And to make things easy to follow along, I'm also providing the exact SVG files for free. Just check the video description. First up, a Polaroid ornament. Here's what the free SVG file looks like for this one. Now all we have to do is add in any text we'd like on top of the front panel. I'm going to use my Snowfall font to type in my new puppy's name and then place this year's date below it. Before we save it, we need to convert the text to outlines, which makes them shapes. I'm in Adobe Illustrator, so I just need to hit type and then create outlines and I'm all set. File, save, and we're ready to go. I've got 3mm basswood for this, and I want to make it feel a little more special, so I'm going to add a faux stain to richen up the color of the wood. To do this, I mix a little burnt umber acrylic paint, and then I stretch the paint further by adding in some matte medium. After that, I'll water it down to make it less opaque. I paint over the entire 12-inch by 12-inch board, and once I have full coverage, I let it sit for a minute or two and then wipe off any excess, so then you'll see that really pretty wood grain poking through. Once it's dry, it's ready to cut. I'll be using xTool's S1 diode laser for this project, and I'm using the 40-watt module. This laser has been hands down my favorite addition to my workspace this year. It is so beginner-friendly and perfect for any holiday crafts that you can dream up. Special thanks to xTool for sponsoring this video and making all of these really fun holiday projects possible. I'll leave a link in the video description for my specific configuration. xTool Creative Space is xTool software, so we can send our files straight to the laser. All I need to do is import my SVG in, and now we need to tell which elements to cut and which ones to engrave. I've already got my text selected, so let's make sure it's set to engrave. Next, select all of the other pieces and change their setting to cut. This part is optional, but I'm going to add painter's tape to the area where it'll engrave my text, so then I can create a stencil and add paint to that text in addition to having it engraved. Next, I'm going to hit Go to Process, and you can see it's estimating this to take about 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Hit Start, and let's watch it cut. It's time to put our ornament together. These pieces will all stack together, so I like checking how it'll all fit before I start adding any paint or glue. We'll start by adding paint to our text. I'm using black acrylic paint for this, and I'm pushing the bristles of a small craft paintbrush into the edges to make sure it all gets filled. Once it's dry, just remove the painter's tape. And for any small leftover pieces, you can use a weeding tool like this one. You could also use metal tip tweezers, a needle, or even a paper clip. That looks good, so now let's start gluing. There are 2 types of glue I like to use for these projects, tacky glue and liquid fusion. Tacky glue tends to dry faster, but liquid fusion has a tighter bond, and I'll leave links to both of those in the video description. Since this ornament won't be handled a lot, I think tacky glue will work great. I'll add a little glue onto the middle piece and then use a cheap craft paintbrush to spread it around and onto the thin edges. Press it onto the backing and wait for it to dry. Once it's dry, just repeat the same process to adhere it onto the front panel and then allow that to dry. I have a little photo of our new puppy and I'm going to slide that in, then cut some baker's twine, and it's ready to hang. It's time for project number 2, a stocking tag. Here's the free SVG for the stocking tag. It measures 5 inches by 2¼ inches. And now we need to add our design to it. And I want to add a little complexity to this one. So I want to engrave snowflakes onto it and then add some cutout text and glue it on top. To do that, I'm going to use my Snowfall font once again, and I'm going to type out my daughter's name, which is Tuesday. Snowfall comes in a clean version, a snow version that has snowflakes on top, and then a snowflake symbols version. I'll use the clean version for her name, then duplicate her name and set it in the symbols font. I'll position the snowflakes around her name until it all feels balanced. Since her name will sit on top of the tag, I need to give myself a guide so I can position the letters perfectly. To do this, I'll first convert them to outlines so they're shapes, then go Object, Path, Offset Path, and do a negative offset so it's brought in a little bit. I'll glue the letters on top of this guide, and I don't want any of the guides peeking through, so I'm doing a quick check and just adjusting any points as necessary. Once that's finished, I'll save the updated SVG file. I'll be using 3mm basswood again, and I'd like my tag to be white and her name to be gold. Since this piece of wood is 12 inches by 12 inches, I can cut both of them out using the same board at the same time. I'll paint the top of the wood with titanium white acrylic paint, and I'll paint a bottom area of the wood with gold acrylic paint. Once that's dry, it's ready to cut. Back in XCS, I'll insert my file. I'll define the material once again as 3mm basswood, and then we can apply our settings to our elements. The snowflakes will be engraved, our text guide for our letters will be scored, and now let's talk about our letters. We need to move the name outside of the tag because it'll be cut into the gold part of our wood, whereas the rest of the elements related to the tag will be cut, engraved, and scored on the white part of the wood. I'll apply a cut setting to the name and a cut setting to the tag shape. And then we need to mark out the two separate areas of our board, the white part and the gold part. I'll first mark out the white part, then I'll hit End Marking in XCS and head back over to the laser where I'll mark out the gold part. Back in XCS, I'll hit End Marking again and then hit Done. Now that we have the two areas defined, I can drag the tag artwork into the white area and the name into the gold area. Next, I'll hit Go to Process. It looks like it'll take about 7 minutes, so I'll hit Start and let's watch it process. Here's how the tag came out. Now all we need to do is glue the name on and attach a string. I'll be using Liquid Fusion for this one since I have small pieces I need to make sure stay on there. I'll add a dab of glue, then use my small craft brush to spread it around, then some tweezers to put it into place. Repeat with the remaining letters, and once dry, I'll attach some white and gray baker's twine to finish it off. Hang it onto your stocking and your custom stocking tag is complete. Our final project is an 8-inch by 8-inch holiday sign. Here's what the free SVG of this sign looks like. So now we just need to add our message. I created some lettering in Procreate that I vectorized, so I'll paste that in. I'm planning to have the lettering cut out and placed on top of the sign base, so I'll need to repeat the same steps we did for the tag to create our guide. Select the lettering and then go Object, Path, Offset Path, and make sure it's a negative offset. I'm going to bring this down to a 1/2 point stroke weight and then make any point adjustments as necessary to make sure that guide won't be seen once the lettering is glued on top. Once that's done, I'll save my updated SVG file. I'm planning to have the sign backing be a whitewash with engraved lines to mimic shiplap. Then I'll cut the lettering out of black and glue it on top. Since this is an 8-inch by 8-inch sign, I need to paint 2 pieces of 3mm basswood for this. For the whitewash, I'll mix titanium white acrylic with matte medium to stretch that paint a little bit further, and I'll water it down quite a bit. Paint the entire board and let it sit for a minute or two, and then wipe any excess off to eliminate paint streaks and give that washed effect. If it isn't as white as you'd like, increase your white paint to water ratio and then just repeat. Next, I'll paint my second board in opaque black, so I'm mixing up some black acrylic with matte medium. The matte medium also makes the paint go on super smooth, which I've found helps reduce the amount of paint streaks from your bristles if you're using a paintbrush. You could also use a roller for this or spray paint if you'd like. Once those are dry, it's time to process our artwork. In XCS, I'll import my SVG file, I'll define my material, then begin applying my settings to the different elements. The guide will be scored, the lettering will be cut, the holes at the top of the sign will be cut, and the lines will be engraved. And then finally, the sign backer will be cut. I'll get my distance setting and mark the area on the whiteboard first. Since everything will be cut, scored, and engraved on the whiteboard except for the lettering, I need to turn the output settings of the lettering off. To do this, select the lettering layer and disable the output. I also like turning the visibility of that layer off afterwards to keep everything super clear. I'll hit Go to Process, and it looks like it'll take just under 4 minutes, and then hit Start. Here's my process sign. So now it's time to put it together. I like laying everything on top first to make sure it looks right. And with that circular border, I need to make sure it lines up perfectly before I start gluing. So I'm also double checking that. I'll be using liquid fusion again here since I have so many small pieces. Following the same process before, I'll put dabs of glue, then use my craft brush to brush out the glue and make sure the smaller areas have some. I'll press the elements down onto the board, then move on to the next pieces, repeating the process of putting beads of glue, spreading them with a brush, and then pressing them into place. If you have small elements like I do, then a nice set of tweezers can really come in handy here. Once everything is glued and dried, it's almost time to hang it. I'm using some pretty green ribbon that I'm pushing through the top holes and then cutting it to size and tying it off. All that's left to do is hang it up and our sign is complete. With a few simple materials and a beginner-friendly laser like the xTool S1, the possibilities are truly endless for pro-quality holiday projects and products. Once again, I'll leave a link to the S1 right in the video description, as well as the free SVG files and links to the other supplies from this video. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments, and also let me know which projects you'll be making this holiday season. I'll see you next time.